Alright, I need to talk about this because I don't think people fully realize what just happened. On July 24th, 2026, Anthropic dropped Claude Opus 5, and after spending real time with it, I'm just going to say the quiet part out loud. Right now, this thing is sitting on the throne. It is the god of AI models at this exact moment, and I mean that in the most practical, unglamorous way possible. Now, before you roll your eyes and think that this is just another hype video, stick with me for like 90 seconds because I promise the actual numbers are wilder than the headline. If you're not satisfied, then click off. I think that's a fair deal. But if you're the kind of person who wants AI news that gets straight to the point without the fluff, do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button right now because this channel lives and breathes this stuff. And you really don't want to miss what's coming next in this space because it's moving fast. Okay, let's get into it. So here's the setup. Anthropic has this whole ladder of models. At the very top, you've got the Mythos tier, which includes Fable 5, their most powerful and frankly kind of scary capable frontier model. Below that sits the Opus line, and then Sonnet, and then Haiku for the lightweight stuff. Opus has always been the serious work model, the one you reach for when the tasks actually matter, and you can't afford a sloppy answer. And here's the thing that made my jaw drop. Opus 5 comes close to the intelligence of Fable 5, their frontier model, and literally half the price. It costs the same as the previous Opus 4.8, which is $5 per million input tokens and $25 per million output. But, and you're not ready for that, it more than doubles Opus 4.8's performance on their software engineering benchmark. Double for the exact same money and not a full generation forward. That's not an incremental bump, that's the kind of jump that makes the older model feels instantly dated. Oh, and get this. This is the fourth model Anthropic has shipped in under 2 months, coming after Mythos 5, Fable 5, and Sonnet 5 back in June. These people are clearly not sleeping. Let me hit you with the receipts because this is where it gets genuinely fun. On CursorBench, which is their software engineering evaluation, Opus 5 is the new state of the art. It beats every other model they've tested. On CursorBench, at full effort, it lands within 0.5% of Fable's 5 peak score, but at half the cost per task. Read that again. Nearly frontier performance for half the bill. Then there's the ARC-AGI 3, which is one of my favorite benchmarks because it throws genuinely novel problems at a model, stuff it cannot have memorized ahead of time. Opus 5 scored 3 times as high as the next best model. Not 3% higher, 3 times higher. That's the kind of gap you almost never see anymore in a field where everybody is usually crammed within a couple of points of each other. On Zapier's AutomationBench, which checks whether a model can actually finish a real business task from start to finish, Opus 5's pass rate is around 1.5 times the next best competitor for the same cost. And here's the kicker. Even at its lowest effort setting, it still passes more tasks than any other model that at their best. Then on OSWorld, a computer use benchmark where the model has to actually operate a machine, it beat Fable 5's best result at just over 1/3 of the cost. I have watched a lot of these launches, and numbers like this do not come very often. But honestly, benchmarks only tell you so much, and what actually sold me is how this thing behaves when it hits a wall. Anthropic shared a few stories that I keep thinking about. In one, Opus 5 was handed a drawing of a machine part and asked to rebuild it as a 3D model in code. The catch? They deliberately gave it no way to actually see the drawing. So what did it do? It wrote its own computer vision pipeline to pull the geometry out of the raw pixels, then reconstructed the whole part from that. And it did it over and over. No other model in the same setup could crack it all 5 tries. In another, they gave it a real bug and one popular open source tool. Opus 5 found the actual root cause and fixed an edge case that the human community's own patch had missed. A competing model just slapped a bandage on the symptom and declared the whole thing resolved. This is a real difference here, and you feel it the moment you rely on it. My favorite one though, an engineer at a trading firm asked for it to build a market data for a brand new exchange. There was no live feed to test against, which normally means that you're stuck. Opus 5 just built its own test harness to check that its code was parsing the data correctly, and then kept it right on going. That is not a chatbot answering a question. That is something acting like a careful, slightly stubborn colleague who refuses to hand your broken work. And I love it for exactly that. Now, here's the part that makes all of this practical instead of just impressive. Opus 5 has this effort toggle where you can dial how hard it thinks, low, medium, or high. Crank it up when you need brilliance, dial it down when you want to save money and time. It is the everyday model now, the default on Claude Max and the strongest option on Claude Pro. There's even a fast mode that runs around 2.5 times the normal speed, so it's not the special occasions only model that you feel guilty for opening. Anthropic literally designed it to be used every single day, and the pricing backs that up. Cheaper thinking, faster answers, fewer wasted tokens. Anyone who has watched their AI bill quietly climb every month knows exactly why that matters so much. And then there is the part that I did not expect to care about nearly as much as I do. Anthropic says Opus 5 is their most aligned model to date. On their internal behavioral audit, it scored the lowest on misaligned behavior of any recent model. It follows their guidelines better than Fable 5, Sonnet 5, or the old Opus. It lies the least, and it's the hardest to trick into misuse. In a year where we keep hearing unsettling stories about models going off the rails, having the most capable everyday model also be the best behaved one is genuinely reassuring. That combination usually does not come together. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend it's flawless, because it's not, and to their credit, Anthropic is refreshingly upfront about it. Opus 5 is not the top dog for the risky, dual-use stuff. On cybersecurity and biology research, it sits behind Mythos 5, their locked-down high-end model. Anthropic deliberately did not train it hard on cyber tasks, and it ships with extra guardrails on a narrow slide of security work. If a request trips one of their safety classifiers, it quietly falls back to the older Opus 4.8 instead. So when I call it the god of AI models, I mean for the actual work most of us do every day. Coding, analysis, research, writing, running, agents. For the genuinely dangerous frontier capabilities, that crown still belongs elsewhere, and honestly, that is probably how it should be. It's also worth remembering the backdrop here. Fable 5, the very model Opus 5 is chasing, got briefly pulled off the market back in June when the government slapped export controls on it over national security concerns. Access only came back at the end of that month, so this entire tier of AI is powerful enough that governments are watching it closely. That context makes Opus 5's balance of power and restraint feel like a real design choice, not an accident. So here's where I land after chewing on all of it. Is calling it the god of AI models a little dramatic? Sure, maybe, but when a single model can write its own tools to solve problems it's not even handed pieces for, matches a frontier model for half the cost, and happens to be the most trustworthy one of the whole lineup, I struggle to name anything I would rather have open in a tab right now. For the daily grind, this is the one to beat. Full stop.